All right. Good evening, everyone. Brad, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. You need to put yours on mute. You got that deer in the head look. There we go. I had it earlier too. Well, good evening. Okay. I'll try not to make too much noise with this gavel when I hit the thing, but I call this city board of directors workshop for the purpose of discussing discussing net metering with the electric department. We have with us as our presenter will be Phil Stokes, and he's got the expert in the case, Mr. Jason Carter, not at his side since we're virtual. He's a remote, but I'm going to turn it over to Phil for the meeting. Just a minute, I have been asked to do something.
So no, I just wanted to introduce Jason Carter for a minute. He's going to start the workshop.
You can start it. Oh, okay. Okay, Jason. Philip, you want to introduce Jason, please?
So Jason Carter is the General Counsel for the Arkansas Municipal Power Association. He was previously, prior to that, the North Little Rock City Attorney, and also part of that time in North Little Rock, he also spent as the Electric Department Director for the City of North Little Rock. So Jason is an expert in the issue of what the state law is as it relates to municipal power and electric companies. So with that, Jason, this is turned over to you.
Thanks, Philip. I'm going to try to share my screen here. I appreciate the introduction. It always makes me feel good. I need to run my wife in here and let you do that again. It might give me some bonus points out of that. But let me launch this presentation. I think you guys have gotten copies of this, so it ought to be showing up on your screen. Hopefully, is everybody seeing that? Let me flip this around here. Now we ought to be full blown. Everybody see that okay? All right, good deal. So yes, I'm Jason Carter. I'm General Counsel for the Arkansas Municipal Power Association. Great to be able to meet with the board of directors in these very odd circumstances. It doesn't get any weirder than this, I guess, but you know, adapt, improvise, and overcome. That's what it's all about. So I want to go through this slide presentation about net metering. I want to tell you in 2019, I was involved in the negotiations of Act 464 that really changed net metering laws in Arkansas, worked with the Municipal League in doing that. And I think got ourselves some great protections in doing so. I want to give you a quick introduction to who Arkansas Municipal Power Association is. You can see that we're 14 cities across the state of Arkansas. Of the 500 cities of the first class, cities of the second class, and towns, Arkansas, there's only 14 that provide their own electric utility service to their citizens. It's a huge benefit for your community. Proud that you guys have hung on to that for so long. And I'm really honored to represent AMPA because of what they do. They provide very affordable, very reliable electricity to their citizens. And, you know, the city of Siloam Springs is a great example of that. You've got a great wholesale power contract. You've got low rates, you know, lower than you would see in most cities in Arkansas. And Arkansas has some of the lowest rates in America. So that's something that you ought to really be proud of. I saw someone raise a hand. It said to the side, someone have a question? Okay. Then I'll keep chugging right along. Let's talk about what is net metering. Let's cover that just for a second, just to make sure that we've got this basic understanding of what it is that we're talking about. To get started, every electric customer in the state of Arkansas, including your customers, have the right to generate their own electricity if they want to. They can hook up a generator or they can make their own power. But they have to unhook from your grid when they do that because they can cause problems with your grid. Net metering is different than that because it allows them to make electricity while they're interconnected with you and allows the free flow of electricity back and forth from the customer to the utility and then the financial mechanism just kind of blends out as a system of credits. So you can see, like on the slide, I've got a little cartoon kind of graphic that shows how electricity is generated, and it goes through the inverter and goes into a house. And then the meter just simply runs forwards or backwards, measuring that excess generation. And then I narrate that in the words to the side, where it says we're measuring the difference in the amount of electricity in kilowatt hours, right? Or under Act 464, it can be kilowatt hours multiplied by an applicable rate. So it could be a different rate for generation than it is for consumption. That's allowed under law now. But it's that difference in the electricity that's supplied by the utility to the customer and the electricity that's generated by the net metering customer and fed back to the electric utility over a period of time that's determined by a commission. Now, if you ever pull out those state laws and you look at it, and it talks about, well, a commission does this and a commission decides that. Under state law, you are the commission. Cooperative utilities are regulated by the Arkansas Public Service Commission. Investor-owned utilities like SWEPCO and Entergy, they're regulated by the Arkansas Public Service Commission. Your electric department that's right there in Siloam Springs is regulated by you. You are the commission. You make the rules. And you're going to see how that authority has been reinstated. It was kind of taken away, but it has been reinstated under net metering. And we'll get to that closer to the end. But just so you know, a net metering customer, the definition of a net metering customer has changed. So before the 2019 law, it was pretty simple. To be a net metering customer, you had to own a net metering facility. So you had to own the solar facility that was interconnecting with the grid. Under Act 464, there's two additional categories. One category is that anyone who leases a net metering facility. So you don't have to own it, you can lease it and still be a net metering customer. And then the one that has other cities, other public organizations around the state kind of excited is that nonprofits and governmental entities can obtain power through a qualifying service contract, kind of like you have your purchase power agreement with GRDA right now, get some really low cost power. It lets these other kind of communities get purchase power agreements, those types of structures to get solar power and pay a rate rather than paying for the capital expense up front. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide that talks about the background of net metering in Arkansas. Here's the big takeaway that I want you to have. Net metering has been around since 2001. It's not new, right? Solar power has been around for decades longer than that. Environmental concerns have been around for decades longer than that. The investment tax credit, the ITC, has been around since 2005. All this stuff's been around for a long time. So what's the game changer now? What's the big push for solar? The answer is price. It's about money. That's the push today. The solar power, cost of solar power 10 years ago was somewhere around the nosebleed level. It was very, very expensive to put in solar power. Today, it's probably cost a third of what it did 10 years ago. The price has just really dropped. So now we've gotten to a point to where when you add in some value from net metering, you add in some value from the investment tax credit, someone can produce electricity for, in many cases, less than the cost of buying it from their utility. So that makes it hard to manage a utility, and it makes it, gives you a lot of food for thought as a regulator, that's for sure. So let's talk about Act 464 because that made a lot of changes in 2019. It's the most significant changes that have shown up in net metering since net metering was first adopted in 2001. So there are 5 sections. You can see the sites there on your screen, what they are. There was no change to the title of the law. It's the Arkansas Renewable Energy Development Act, AREDA, right? The purpose of the law is unchanged. There were some changes to the definitions, and we're going to talk about that because those are going to regulate you. They're going to affect your business model. And then there are some significant changes in Section 604, which you have the ability to adopt those if you want to. Not really encouraging you to do that, but you have the authority to adopt those rules under Section 604. And then under section 605, there's a brand new section that we really argued hard to get. But there's a brand new section just for municipal utilities and to give you some flexibility in how you regulate net metering at your local level. So it's important for you guys to understand that structure because you can better understand where the limits of your authority lie. So just touching on each one of those points, the first is the definitional changes. And like we talked about earlier, net metering used to just only include generation that was owned by the customer. Now it can be leased by the customer. It also includes net billing arrangements. So the energy can be charged at different rates and we net the bill out instead of just the energy. We also talked about how governmental and nonprofit entities can obtain power from net metering facility under a qualifying service contract. And by qualifying, I mean it qualifies for the investment tax credit. So that's section 7703 of the tax code defines what a qualifying service contract is, but that's probably more in the weeds than you want to get right now. Net metering now includes energy storage. It didn't include that before, but now it does. So people can install batteries with their solar facilities. You just need to know batteries are still pretty expensive. They're still kind of where solar was several years ago, where it's hard to make those worth the money to pay for themselves. Avoided cost calculations are more detailed for investor-owned utilities and cooperatives, but the governing body of municipal utilities still has a lot of leeway in how they define avoided cost. So that means when a net metering customer makes solar power, any customer makes energy, and you avoid paying for energy, that's the cost that you avoid that's attributed to your customer. You have to forgive me, I'm in Conway. We've got a train right downtown. You're gonna hear them rolling. They're rolling through town right now. So apologize for that, but I can't stop the train. There's a quantifiable benefits calculation that's been added in the definitions. You really don't have to worry about that unless you follow the rules in 604. And then non-residential capacity limits, and this is a biggie. This is a big change, is that non-residential capacity limits have been raised to 1,000 kilowatts. So before Act 464, the generational capacity for a net metering facility in Arkansas was 300 kilowatts. That's it. That's the top of the limit. That limit's been raised to 1,000 kilowatts, and as you'll see, in certain circumstances, it can be raised to 5,000 kilowatts or 20,000 kilowatts, which, I mean, that's 20 megawatts. That's big. That's huge, right? So you're talking about a whole lot of acreage of blue panels with a facility like that. Important flexibility for you is that the governing body sets the limits for a municipal utility under section 605. So you have the ability to set your own capacity limits, although it does have some findings that go along with it. We'll get to that in just a second. So regarding the substantive changes in section 604, again, these are rules that I don't necessarily encourage you to follow, but there's things that you should consider in your rulemaking process. If a net metering customer is not billed a demand charge, meaning residential customers, right, then you can use two-channel billing, right, and you can impose standby charges, and you can impose other costs as long as the actions you take don't result in an unreasonable cost allocation, right? We want all of our customers to pay their own way. We don't want one customer to subsidize the cost of another. If a customer is billed a demand charge, we typically try to just use simple net metering. That means the only thing that nets out is the electric charge. It does not net out a demand charge. It does not net out a service charge. So the meter just simply rolls forward and backward. I'll tell you, there's some debate about that that's going on at the Arkansas Public Service Commission. We're actually waiting for an order to come back from those guys about how that simple net metering applies to facilities that are larger than 1,000 kW. And we're expecting some kind of a reduced credit is really probably what's going to happen. As I mentioned, under Section 604, capacity limits can be increased to 5,000 or 20,000 kilowatts. 20 megawatts is typically around 100 acres worth of solar panels. Gives you an idea of scale. There's a rate lock provision that allows customers who sign interconnection agreements before December 31st, 2022 to lock in their rates for 20 years. That's a huge benefit. There's also net metering aggregation under Section 604, which means that somebody can consume electricity in one place while they're generating it in another place. I give you a lot of caution about that because there are times when someone's generating in one place and consuming electricity in another place that they're not paying their fair share for use of the distribution system. So you got to think about that. Also under Section 604, there's a requirement to purchase excess credits at avoided cost plus quantifiable benefits after 24 months. So there is that requirement that excess credits would be purchased. So let's talk about the good one, right? This is the one that we're really going to put our fingers into. And I know these teleconferences can be tough, but I want you to dial in with me now because this is the good one, right? This is the good stuff. So stay with me. Okay, so because there's basically 5 rules that you got to remember with net metering that you have to comply with state law. And then you get flexibility around those rules, okay? But I want you to really dial into these. Rule number 1 is that you must allow net metering facilities to interconnect in accordance with the rules and regulations you adopt. So once you adopt rules and regulations, which you are required to do, you've got to have net metering rules. And someone follows your net metering rules, then they have a right to interconnect into your system. It gives them predictability in the business flow process, and that's kind of what you want to be able to do, is to give people some predictability. So you have to have rules that allow people to interconnect. Rule number 2, you either follow the procedures in Section 604, don't do that, or you make your own procedures under Section 605. You can be more creative and you can tailor your rules to your community, do the things that you need to do, right, so that everybody's paying their own way and the system works just fine and peace reigns throughout the community, right? That's what we want, right? That's what we want. So that's rule number 2, says you can either follow the standard, the kind of requirements in Section 604, or you can kind of roll your own together for what best suits your community. Rule number 3, so you will only impose capacity limits below 25 kilowatts residential, 300 kilowatts non-residential, if it's necessary for reliable utility operations or the public health, safety, or welfare. So think of it like this. The old rule was that capacity limits were 25 kilowatts, 300 for residential, 300 kilowatts for non-residential. You got to really think about, does that make sense for my community? Or should we have a higher limit? Or should we have a lower limit? If you should have a lower limit, then you've got to have those findings that, hey, we really need to do this for reliable utility operations. When you're struggling with that decision, think about how the price of solar power is coming down, and think about if too many people start adopting solar, then it will deprive others of the opportunity to do it as well. So I've seen a lot of utilities right now are dropping that limit below 25, 300 because they think that it just serves their community best. But you've got to do what you think is best for your community. Rule number 4. So a governing body may not establish a rate or fee that reduces the value of electricity from a net metering facility below avoided cost. So that really makes it critical that you know what your avoided cost is, because you can't start tacking on a bunch of fees that reduces the value of the electricity that's generated below that avoided cost, right? So that's a critical point to understand. And last, for customers who are billed a demand charge, simple net metering applies. The meter rolls forward when they consume electricity. It rolls backwards when they generate more electricity than they consume. So, and then it just nets out on the bill. As I said earlier, the demand charge doesn't net out. The service charge does not net out. It's only the energy charge. That's the way net metering works. So here's my last slide, is You need to adopt a net metering ordinance. You got to have one. I think you've got one on the books, right? But you got to think about updating that and making it more current and exercising your flexibility. You have to determine your avoided cost and look at that periodically. Every now and then pull it out, look at your costs. Every time you're thinking about rates, think about your avoided costs and make a finding as to what your avoided costs are in your community. Think about what your capacity limits should be. Should they be 25,300? Should they be less than that? I'm going to tell you, if you raise them above that, it's going to turn into a significant challenge for you. So consider that. That's a decision that you've got to make. You got to decide whether you want to follow Section 604 or create your own local rules. I would encourage you to create your own local rules. You can decide whether or not you want to allow meter aggregation. If you're under 604, you have to allow that. You can decide whether or not you want to allow virtual or community net metering, whether you want to implement two-channel billing, whether you want to allow customers to lock in their rates. And then whether generation credit can be purchased or whether it just stays in their account as a generation credit or whether it expires after a given period of time. So again, you can see kind of one of my points at the bottom. If you have a net metering ordinance, you probably comply with the law, but you're probably not exercising all the flexibility that you need to really serve your community well under Act 464. So with that, I will yield to questions or Phil will kick me off and he'll do his talking. So it's however y'all want to manage that.
So thank you, Jason. And I wanted to let the board know, since that Act 464 was passed, Phil has been working on trying to answer a lot of these things that Jason just presented to us. And that ordinance that ultimately will be presented to the board will address a lot of those. But the next part of this workshop is for Phil to walk you through what we are wanting to ultimately propose as an ordinance to the board that sets the avoided cost, it sets the capacity limits, and it basically answers a lot of those questions that Jason just said we have to start thinking and thinking about. So before we go to questions, Jason, if you can hang on, we'll let Phil do his. If you will, Jason, not share your view, and Phil will share his, and I will go back to mute, and Phil will present the rest of this presentation.
Okay, thank you. Jason's a hard act to follow. I'm trying to put this up, but it's not letting me for some reason. I go to share screen and it says it's host disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't know if, Jason, I've lost your presentation, but I can't get mine on for some reason.
Go ahead and try it again. I just gave you the co-host privilege.
All righty, here we go. Let me bring it on up here. And net metering, adapting to change, and change is what Jason's been talking about. I kind of wanted to show you a simple home here using 1,000 kilowatt hours. That's typically what.
Bill, can you hang on a second? It's not showing us the screen.
Okay.
So I think you need to.
Let me go back. Maybe I think I need to go to, let me share right here. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
All righty. Sorry about that.
There it is.
Okay, we got it. Shared. Bring it back up here.
Yep, we see you now. You're good.
Okay, take that off. Good, okay. So I basically want to show a home here using 1,000 kilowatt hours. That's the average use for a home for a month. And then we have our residential rate for here in the city of Siloam Springs of 9.78 cents. Basically, what we're showing here is the city is supplying electricity to the home through 1 meter. There's a lot involved, as you all know, with getting electricity from GRDA, our supplier. They use a large renewable portfolio, they have a lot of hydro, a lot of wind, and last year they peaked at 71% renewables at one time. And so, you know, they're big into renewables already. They have, of course, natural gas and coal, but it's primarily natural gas, wind, and hydro is their portfolio right now. But so, you know, there's expense involved in getting the electricity from GRDA to the city, and the city's got expense from all of our poles and wires and miles that we maintain. And so, you know, GRDA has 2 big substations that feed us. We're blessed with a redundant system for our size of municipal. And so they're a really good power supplier. And so here is just a simple meter to a home. This is how we currently do our net metering here in Siloam Springs. We have 1 meter that measures how much electricity the city provides the home with. And then we have this same meter has the ability to look at how much excess electricity the solar panel produces. Okay, and so using our example here of 1,000 kilowatt hours for the home, if this home used 500 kilowatt hours, then we'd multiply that times our rate, come up to $48.90. And then if, in our example, this solar panel made 600 kilowatt hours for the month, and the home used 500 of that, then there would be an excess of 100 kilowatt hours. And then we would credit the customer at the avoided cost to GRDA of 2.6 cents. How we come up with that 2.6 cents is what GRDA's average cost was last year for energy. And so we look at the last 12 months of last year, and we come up with that average cost, and then we come up with this 2.6 cents. And so that's what we pay our customers for their excess energy that they generate. And so they come up with the bill of $46.30. Now, what we're proposing is a buy all, sell all. And so what that means is the city would meter everything that the homeowner uses. And so in this example, this 1,000 kilowatt hours is what they use for the month. We would meter all of that and charge them the 9.7 cents for their electricity. At the same time, we would take another meter and meter everything that the solar panel produces. And in this example, 600 kilowatt hours, why then we would credit them at the avoided cost of 2.6 cents to come up with this bill. And so that's called just buy all, sell all. What this does, it protects the city from lost revenue. And at the same time, we're supplying the customer with a rebate for the energy that they make instead of GRDA. It's energy that we don't buy from GRDA that we avoided buying. We're now buying it from the customer. And so we have a long-term contract with GRDA. As Jason mentioned, the rates are really good. They're a full requirements contract with GRDA, and so it's a good deal for the city to have this firm contract. And their rates have been really steady over the last few years, and it's projected to be steady for the next 2 or 3 coming up. And so it's a 35-year contract. GRDA allows us 100 kW of renewable generation. If we go over that, then they penalize us. Last year, we paid $266 in penalties. That's a small number, but still, we got 26 solar customers right now, and each month we add a few more. And so that number could grow exponentially if solar really catches on, if we don't kind of adjust what we're doing. And that's our concern. You know, who pays this penalty? Do you pass it on to all of our customers or just to the solar customers? And so that's something we're getting into besides the loss of revenue. And so the proposed policy is the residential will be limited to 10 kW, and the non-residential, which is like your commercial, industrial, is limited to 100 kW. We're doing that because, as Jason mentioned, if you allow a lot of solar on your system, then you've got to go back and beef up your electric lines, your switches. It just really taxes the system. And so we feel like we can prove that our system would be harmed greatly by large amounts of solar. For instance, if you didn't limit your commercial solar, I mean, somebody could put on a large solar farm, and during the week while they're making their product that the industrial customers making, that solar is going to the plant. During the weekends, when their plant shut down and these solar panels are putting out power, it can cause havoc on your system because they're not using it. It's now being sent out in our system. And so, you know, that's a real concern that we have. And so we think this 10-100 combination is a good combination to go with. And so if we, you know, don't change what we're doing, then we're going to have a huge loss in revenue. And so how do you make that revenue up? Do you raise your rates because the solar customers are forcing you to do so? Because basically what happens is the solar customer, he goes out and buys these panels, and we're talking some big dollars that they pay for these panels, and they do offset their electric usage, but what they do is their electric rates go down that they're paying, but they have to pay for these panels for X amount of years, 20 or 30 years. And so they're really not helping themselves. All they're doing is shoving money to the finance companies and not keep it here in Siloam Springs. And so we want to, we realize that some of these customers have bought these panels knowing what our rates are, and we don't want to penalize them. And so we would like to include a grandfather clause that would allow them to continue with the rate that they are now getting for 10 years. And then after they're allowed to recoup their investment, why then that rate would no longer be in effect. So it'd be a 10-year grandfather clause. And so that's basically the program. Is kind of quick and dirty, but I think the board, I'm sure, has some questions, so we'd like to allow you some time for that.
Thank you, Phil. So Mayor, if it's okay, I want Jason and Phil to unmute, Jason, unmute your mic, but as board members, if you have questions, if you will do the little raise your hand option, and then I'll go through and make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to ask their question. And Phil, you can stop sharing your screen. I think it's usually up at the top somewhere where it says stop sharing screen. There you go. So if any board member has a question, I would tell you that there's a lot of information, a lot of detail here. It's not something that Phil has quickly put together. We've been working on this for some time. I think as a board member, you have to think about setting as not only a board member for the city, but also as a utility board representative. And this is something that I think you have to look at for the next 10, 15, 20 years down the road as part of this GRDA contract that we have. And this is something that we wouldn't bring to you if we didn't think it was important. As Phil said, we don't want to get into a situation a few years from now where our non-solar customers are subsidizing our solar customers. We want to try to make it fair for everybody. And part of that fairness is to give a grandfather clause for those who have already invested in solar, to give them a chance to amortize that value, that investment that they've done. So I'm going to continue talking until I see board members hold their hands up. All right. So Mindy, you can unmute yourself and.
Okay. I can talk now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I do appreciate the information. I appreciate the grandfather clause. I do have a citizen in my ward that has invested the big bucks into one of these solar panels. I do want to encourage our citizens to use the renewable energy and be as green, so to say, as possible. I do appreciate the information about GRDA. really focusing on renewable energies as well. So that's helpful. I would like to see that grandfather clause of 10 years be at least 10 years. I wouldn't be opposed to bumping that a little bit to maybe 12 or 15 years. I do understand we're wearing both hats. The city needs that income, but we are still at such a, yes, we're paying $250 a year. That's still relatively low for going over what we're allowed. But if we were to grandfather those 26 customers in now for an additional 2 to 5 years, I would be in favor of that. Because it's going to take them a while to recoup those costs that they put into the solar panels. Anyway, that would be my recommendation.
And recognize right now, it's just a workshop. We will ultimately bring that, but we'll definitely talk about that before we bring the final ordinance back to the board. Anything else, Mindy?
Nope.
All right, so I'm going to go to Brad.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I was posed with a question. What are your thoughts on an electrical board? Compromise the folks in the city that, are high-end users, maybe have a little bit more knowledge. I don't know, if that's something Phil and you would come up with, or I just wondering what your thoughts are on an electrical board.
So some cities have an electric or a utility board, could be water, could be sewer and electric. And you would, some cities would give this decision away to that board and they would have the final decision-making capacity. Some cities would give the board the authority to look at this and make a recommendation ultimately back to a city board. So it depends on how you want to do it. I don't think you would want to, if this council, if the board of directors rather decided to set up a utility board, it would probably be my recommendation that you allow them to make recommendations to you, but ultimately you still make the decision so that you're not giving away the authority to raise rates to an unelected board, basically. But that's a whole nother issue, much larger than this, to try to, because there's Jason could probably speak. There are pros and cons to having utility boards. Jason, do you have anything to add?
I would say of the 14 cities that are out there, 8 have some form of independent governance. And I'd say independent governance, additional governance that helps the city in the decision-making process. And they run the gamut. Some are incredibly independent of the city. And there are times when that causes friction. There are some that act more as an agency or advisory role, where they kind of handle the stakeholder processes of engaging the public, and they focus on really educating themselves about the utility business. And I think, as Philip said, they come back with recommendations where the city board would be the ultimate decision maker. Bentonville recently organized a board like this. I helped them set that up, and that's the way that they've gotten organized, where they have they'll run hearings and processes and make recommendations, but the ultimate decision maker in Bentonville is the city council.
Brad, anything else?
No, I'm just looking, 40 years down the road. What would work best for Siloam long term? And so that's out there. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, if we went that route, the recommendations come back to the board makes the final decision. I just think as we go out to the future, we're going to run into this more, and consideration of a board to process a lot of that and then bring it back and then come to the board instead of tying up a lot of the board's time. That's just what I'm thinking of long term.
And
Just
I
a
think,
question. Thank you.
I think having a board there may be some benefit to that. But if they're making a recommendation to the city board of directors, you're still going to be in the position you are today. You're just going to have another board making some recommendation. Phil would be making his recommendation to that board. That board, just like the planning commission, would make a decision and hopefully vote and make a recommendation to you as a city board. So there's some benefits maybe to that, but it's it's something that we can talk about maybe as part of the city council goals, city board goals when we talk about that. Brad, if you would mute yourself again, I'm going to go to Marla. You were next one to raise your hand.
I have a question for Phil.
Okay.
I have a question for Phil. Phil, when you had the first slide up showing that the house generated 600 and they used 500 and we just credited them 100, is that one way to do it? It looks kind of like the solar people are getting charged twice. But then we are looking at the buy all, sell all when they get credit for everything. And that's the manner that we would work with our utility customers.
Yeah, well, the slide was, it's kind of hard to put everything in there that you want to, but basically, the solar panel was putting 500 kilowatt hours to the home that wasn't metered. It had 100 left over that the home didn't need, so it was excess to the city. Okay, and so the home used 500 from the city, the home used 500 from the solar panel,
Okay,
and then the 100 extra went to the city that we credited the customer with.
okay, so the total amount for the home was 1,000.
Yes.
But if we go to the buy all, sell all, is that better for the city or better for the customer?
It's better for the city because we haven't lost that 500 revenue that the solar panel gave to the home.
Okay,
Okay, and so the customer is getting credit for everything that's generated, but at a lower rate.
okay. And who sets up the percentage that the customer gets paid back?
That's determined by what we avoided paying our power supplier, GRDA. We're just instead of paying GRDA for the energy, we're paying the customer for the energy.
Okay,
And so we determine that by the previous year's average energy charge from GRDA.
all right, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay.
So Phil, that 2.6 cents, the avoided cost, could theoretically change from year to year depending on what GRDA's average cost for the prior year was.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Marla, if you would mute yourself, you already have. Lisa, you're next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I've had a lot of customers call me that currently use the solar panels. Do we know, I know you wasn't there at the time, and I know Phil wasn't there at the time, but do we know what these customers were told as in regards to the old ordinance that we have on the net metering?
I don't know that I can speak to what they were told. We have a policy in place today. And the policy has been in place for the last 5 years, and to my knowledge before that. So we've been following that policy.
One of the things Mindy said was talking about the 10 years. I've had a lot of customers ask me, why is it only 10 years? Could it not be extended for the grandfathered only, not for the future, but for the grandfathered only? Have we thought about, because of the conversations in the past, have we thought about making that a permanent? And it's 20, how many customers? 24 customers?
Yeah, 26 is what I
26 customers. And how would that affect the city if we did do that?
I think long term, I don't think you want to do a grandfathering clause ever that's in perpetuity. So the question is where to draw the line. We chose 10 years. As Mindy said, it could be 12, it could be 15. I think once you get beyond that, it looks to becoming more permanent in nature. Whether it's 10 years or 12 years or 15 years, I don't think you're going to see any pushback from staff other than, as we stated, we want to give those existing customers, those 26 customers, an opportunity to recoup their investment in solar. And whether it's 10 years or 12 years or 15 years, you go out to 20 and 25 years, it's a really, really long time. I would say in my background, when I was doing energy audits on houses and we talked to customers about what is cost effective, anything that was much more than 10, 12 years, it wasn't cost effective from an economic standpoint to do that energy conservation measure. So that's sort of where we got to the 10-year window. If the board wishes to, whether we change that or not, you have that opportunity when it comes before you to change it to 12 years or change it to 15 years. And if the board wants, obviously you can change it to 25. We wouldn't recommend that. We think that becomes more perpetuity in nature, but clearly we want to give an opportunity to the existing residents that have invested in renewable facilities like solar, an opportunity to recoup that investment. Lisa, anything else? No? Oh, you've already muted yourself. Sorry. Okay. Carol Smiley, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, I don't know that I have a lot of questions because I'm still really don't understand a lot of the solar and the metering, but I do know that the customers that are on solar have spent a considerable amount of money. And I don't know when the first solar customer went online. I don't remember that. I don't know how far back that goes. And I know one of the customers that had contacted the board members felt that 10 years was not long enough for him, but I think he's a more recent solar customer. I don't have a problem with going maybe another couple of years. What I get from this is that what we are trying to make sure that doesn't happen, that as more solar customers come online, the regular electric customers are not supporting the solar customers. Am I correct in that or not?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So I want the people to be able to get a substantial payback, but I don't know what they've been told. And we had no responsibility to what they were told by the people that sold them that system either, or leased them that system, because at the time when this started, I guess you weren't leasing, you were buying. But those are my only thoughts. I do like the idea of having some type of oversight board or committee, and I'm looking at it more like the planning commission that recommends to us, even though we still, even with the planning commission, we look over what they have proposed to us, and it still takes time for us to look at those things. But I think that's what our job is. But I think it would help if we had a board that does the research and presents information to us. And that's all I really have. But I do appreciate everything that's been presented tonight. It does help me understand. And there's not only solar, there is some wind. I do think we have a couple of wind customers here. If I remember, I do remember one came to the board. So, but thank you.
Thank you. And the last person that has their hand up is Reed.
I'm just wanting to kind of restate a couple of things. I think in that we are, in essence, trying to play catch up, because we're not at the beginning of this. There's already people with the solar power, and we are trying to curtail difficulty that's going to be happening, that could happen in the future. And from that, I do understand it, but I know that the ones that have invested currently they could be seeing some difficult times ahead. And because of that, I am in favor of extending that a little beyond the 10 years to the 12 or possibly even the 15. Being in the industry that I'm in, the average homeowner only lives in a house about 8 years. But I would think that if someone's looking at solar, that they're not looking for a short-term payback on that. And that's my comments. Thank you.
So, Bob, you're the only one that we haven't heard from. Do you have any questions or comments?
Probably the only one that didn't know how to hold his hand up. I know I was instructed as to how to do that, but I'm old and I didn't know how to do it. So the only question I had was, I'm perplexed as to what the definition of avoided cost is. I like to do that as often as possible, but I'm not sure I know what that means.
Bill, can you answer that?
Yeah, avoided cost is simply what we avoided paying our power supplier for energy. And so they give us what they have, when they bill us, they have energy and demand as the primary two bills that we get from our power supplier. And energy is one of those numbers. And so, of course, the solar panel is putting out energy. And so if we buy energy from the solar customer, we're not buying it from GRDA. So we're avoiding buying energy from GRDA, we're buying it from the solar customer.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
So, as Phil stated, there are a number of charges and fees that are sort of added on by GRDA to make up the total bill, but the actual cost per kilowatt hour is that avoided cost. So, anybody else have any questions from the board? So I want to tell the attendees, the members of the public, I believe there are 5 now that are listening and have signed in. There will be an opportunity during the board meeting coming up here at 6:30 for public input. If any of them wish to speak to the board about this issue, they will raise their hand, and the mayor and I'll recognize them to make sure the mayor gives them the opportunity to speak. So you can hear from them also. And if nobody has any other questions, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
All right, no one unmuted. So that's kind of fun having the power to mute somebody or unmute something. This is new territory for us, but I think we did it pretty well. And Jason, thank you for your expertise and your presentation there. That's very much appreciated. And I know some things have, I think one of the comments that was made, particularly by one of the board members, was we don't know what the people who sold the solar panel product told their customers. And I do know that one of the folks they were told something was wrong in the fact that they thought that they didn't realize that the municipality had the right to reduce the amount of the payback based on their costs. They thought they'd get the full amount they were paying rebated back through what the city was charging them, rebated back to them through their metering and what they fed into the city over and what they used in the cities. And that's not the case. The city does have the right to protect themselves, so that, because if everybody got it 100%, that includes our profit. That includes a lot of things that a lot of services in this city depend on. So anyway, we're going to have a meeting here in about 5 minutes for our regular city board. Again, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Phil Stokes, for your work. Thank you, attendees, and hope you stay with us for the next period of time. So for the board meeting that will start in 5 minutes at 6:30. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned. Yeah, he did. Good evening. I call this regular workshop of the Board of Directors for the City of Siloam Springs to order. Roll call.
Tappington,
Here.
Smiley,
Here.
Burns,
Here.
Hunt, Rissler, Coleman, Carroll, all here.
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 Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I wanted to remind the board to make sure you mute your system so that your background noise or anything like that is not going to be a problem. So Carol, I think you're the last one. There we go. All right. We've had roll call. Now we're going to ask that Director Smiley lead us in our opening prayer. And we here, if you want to at home, you may stand for the Pledge of Allegiance after following the prayer. Thank you. Carol?
Dear Heavenly Father, we continue through this pandemic to thank you for the many blessings you have given our community. Tonight, we come asking you to protect us, lead and guide us during this critical health crisis. Help our citizens make healthy choices for themselves and others, and be with us as we continue to do the business of the city. Watch over our leaders and continue to keep our community, state, and nation safe. Our sympathies to those who have lost loved ones. Protect each and every one of us. It takes every one of us, and this too shall pass. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of America, to the
To the republic,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There we go. Okay, now am I there? Okay. We are officially in our first virtual meeting for the City Board of Directors for the City of Siloam Springs. Just want to make a little statement here just to kind of set the tone here for this evening. Obviously, these are trying times for all of us, those on the board, those with our city, and our valued customers and residents. First, let me thank you. I want to thank each of you in advance for your patience as we go through this evening. While we are embracing new technologies, there's certain to be some flubs and glitches. And I apologize in advance for those I make and for anybody else, but know that we are trying our best to minimize those technological interruptions. We are all trying to be flexible in this time of social distancing. This Zoom meeting has allowed us to keep city business moving and still meet in a legal and safe way. Thousands of people have taken to virtual meetings over this past week. The technology has helped us continue our lives, whether it's ordering something online, FaceTiming our loved ones, or having a Zoom Bible study, or creating a collaborative document. Thank you to city staff who have worked with the board of directors and with city employees to work virtually. Thank you. We appreciate the public's flexibility with public meeting attendance. Your comments will continue to be made public and will be part of the official part of record. We have a few housekeeping items regarding tonight's meetings that we'd like to go over. Board members, please remember to mute yourself unless you are speaking. City Administrator Patterson is at the technological reins and will work to have the meeting flow as best as possible. To the public, we need you to utilize the raise your hand feature, either over the Zoom app, online in the meeting, or via your telephone. For those on the phone, star 9 is how you can raise your hand. So again, for those on the phone, if you wish to address the board at an appropriate time when it is available for the public to speak, we ask that you hit *9 and you can raise your hand and you will be unmuted individually, and you'll be notified if you are the one being unmuted. Please note that the order of recognition will not change, and I will notify you when you are being recognized. Either I or Philip Patterson will, City Administrator Patterson will. So now that we are past that, we're going to move into some of our regular business. The first is the approval of minutes for the regular board meeting of March 17, 2020. I think technically we should all unmute our phones. Or unmute yourself. Make sure we've got them all. Okay. We got all board members are unmuted. You have each received a copy of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 17, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Carol Smiley and Marla Sappington. We have a motion and a second. Is there anyone who feels there need to be changes made to the motion as minutes as you've received them? Being none, we will vote on the motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed,
Aye.
nay. The minutes are approved. Okay. Now then, mute back. There we go. Thank you. It's interesting. One of the things I'm noticing, and I'm sure our tech people are already noticing this, we've got different internet speeds. And some of you are just, it's virtual. We're just seeing you just like you're standing right here. And then some others, it's a little bit slow. And I'm guessing that's probably what it is. I don't know. So, but we're going to work through it. But with some of you, we'll hear you before you get a chance to get it out of your mouth. So, all right. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to make a little change in your, as you have the agenda. Okay. And that's right. Public comment. We might want to do public comments with me. Do we have any public comments? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, part of the issue that we did early on for this virtual meeting was to tell the public if anybody had any comments that they wanted to put into the record as part of the public comment to email the city clerk. And we have one email that the city clerk received, and I would ask that Renee read that into the record with the name of the individual. I don't know if their address is there, but the name of the individual who sent it also.
Renee, would you read that email into the record? Thank you.
This is from Amber Morgan. She is asking Mr. Philip Patterson to please freeze the 3% surcharge on using debit card to pay the utility bills. She realizes it's only 3%, that an extra $5 will add up, especially with zero income for a lot of furloughed employees, myself being one of those employees, with the other options available to us also costing money just for us to pay our utility bill. For instance, if the city were to charge 3% on a $169 bill to 5,000 residents, that would be $25,000. That's quite a bit of money to receive just because the residents decided to stay safe and not make an appointment to have to go to the bank to get cash and then pay the electric bill at the door of the utility building. Our options are to make an express bill pay account, which is unavailable to us right now. And then she provided a screenshot of the express bill pay that said it's currently experiencing heavy traffic, and they apologized to please try back later. And it says our next option is to again go out and buy a money order. That again is another wasted $3, as well as potential for catching the virus. Our next option right now is to buy checks. I have not had a box of checks in a good 15 years. Checks are almost an obsolete option. Our final option is to make automated billing. which at times like these is not a very sound choice to make, especially for those residents that will no longer have income or the income they were used to having before this coronavirus. So I'm asking Mr. Philip Patterson to recognize the need to drop the 3% surcharge in our moment of need. In his mission statement on the city website, shows the reasons why I trust that he will try to help us. I've copied his vision statement and pasted it at the bottom of this page to show what makes me believe that the residents of Siloam Springs can trust that our best interest is top priority, especially in these crazy days. Thank you so much for taking the time to read my question, and I do hope you will please help out the residents of Siloam Springs during this time. She did copy the vision statement and highlighted that revenue is the income generated from normal business operations.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that letter. As normal during our public comments, we don't necessarily respond to those comments, but notes are being taken, and a matter such as the request here would obviously require action by the board. And I think it would be best if we could get that, take a look at that and get the discussion and take it back to the board for any input on that. So any further, that was all? Do you want to respond?
Thank you, Mayor and Board. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing tomorrow is meeting with Christina and Adrian to talk about where we're going to continue to go. And you'll hear some of that later tonight during my administrative report. But this will be something we'll take in advisement. I don't, if we wait to do it until we come back to the board, that's 2 weeks down the road. I don't think if we decide to do that, we'll probably proceed with it and then ask the board to adopt a resolution at a later date that sort of gives the city administrator the authority to do some of the things that we've already done. So this is a unique situation, but we'll definitely take that under advisement. I'll reach out to Mrs. Morgan tomorrow and have a conversation with her just so she'll know that and that you'll know that. Thank you.
Okay, we have one Caroline who has her hand raised. You want me to go ahead and release? I'll go ahead and got it. Caroline?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
No. Caroline?
I'm Caroline here at 114 West Harvard Street, and I wanted to give some input on the workshop. I heard something about what we were told when we put in our solar panels. I put mine in 4 years ago, and it wasn't the solar panel people that told us how it would work. It was actually the city. It was the electric department that came out to do the inspections and all of that sort of thing. And we were told that they welcomed solar panel customers because it would save, in the long run, it would save the city money having to build more infrastructure for electricity. And so they were very happy to have me as a solar customer. And they told me that what I produced, net metering, what I produced would be subtracted from what I used, and I would have one bill then just on what I used. So yeah, I don't know. That's just what I was told. I should have gotten it in writing. I didn't realize the city would change so quickly. So anyway, I have a 25-year loan on my solar panels, and I'm only into the 5th year of paying for them. So I'm on a fixed income. So I hope you keep those things in mind as you make your discussions and decisions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Caroline. Anyone else? I don't see any other hands raised, so we'll move on then to the our regularly scheduled items. And one of those items is a resolution that we are going to move to the forefront. If you look down your agenda, it's the first resolution under resolutions. It's resolutions D. Resolution 18-20, establishing meeting protocol during time of national or statewide emergency. This is a resolution that the board needs to pass to authorize us and set a protocol for how we're going to handle certain things with regard to this. And the main thing I requested that we put this at the very beginning so that this is in place as we move through with our regularly scheduled business. So I'll turn that over to Philip. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as the mayor stated, as part of the guidance that we got from the Arkansas Municipal League on having virtual public meetings was to adopt a resolution giving the board the authority and the ability to do this in times of crisis, such as this COVID-19 public health emergency. So this resolution does not expand this ability to have virtual meetings beyond the COVID-19 crisis. It is specifically for that. It's not something that we feel is appropriate to make an ordinance and put into law, but it is something that we feel in this particular case gives us an added protection in order to have these types of meetings. And with that, we would recommend adoption by the board.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Philip. And I just eliminated my whole agenda. I just dropped it off for some reason, hit the wrong button. Okay, so we'll, are there any comments from the audience? Those attendees, are there anyone raising their hand that would like to address this resolution? Being none, then I'll turn it over to the board for comments or questions of staff.
Do I unmute myself then? Because I did raise my hand.
Did? Yes, that's all we do. We can't unmute hers. Philip, will you yes, go ahead, Philip. Carol, I think you're there.
I've unmuted myself. Can I talk? Can I speak now? Okay. I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to thank our city administrator, our IT staff, and all of the staff of the city for helping me, educate me on the use of this Zoom application. It was new to me, but I'm finding it to be a little bit easier to use than I thought, and I hope everybody else has that same feeling.
Thank you, Carol. Mindy, yours was next.
I concur with Carol's comments, but also you said this just applies to this COVID-19 crisis. If by some chance we have, things get back to normal and then there's a resurgence of this again in the fall, like some have predicted, will this still apply?
If it's still related to COVID-19, I believe it will apply. We didn't want to make it a blanket opportunity because of the conflict of these types of meetings and the FOIA laws.
Right.
Arkansas Municipal League is working to potentially try to get an amendment to the FOIA laws for these types of meetings. And until that happens, we think we have to take it on a case-by-case basis.
But there are not specific dates on here. So if we do have the COVID again in the fall and we have to go to this, we should be okay. Okay.
And just to concur, Jay, do you concur with that?
Yes, it has to do specifically with the declaration of the pandemic emergency. And so as long as that is in effect, or if there is a new declaration that would come about, if there is a resurgence, then yes, this would apply.
Thank you, Jay. Any further questions? Being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 18-20.
Mr. Mayor,
Carol?
I move that we approve resolution number 18-20.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Brad?
Second. Yes.
Brad? I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion to approve? Nobody's got a hand raised or anything. Being none, we will vote on the motion to approve on the resolution 18-20. Roll call. Now unmute so that you can roll call. Board.
Smiley,
Yes.
Coleman,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next, we'll go back up to the top of your agenda and go to the under contracts and approvals. We'll go with the Moss transfer repair for the electric department with Sunbelt Solomon Solutions for them in the amount of $535,230.53, and I'll let Phil Stokes explain that dollar factor so everybody understands exactly what the city is going to be, what you're passing as far as expenditures for the city. Phil?
Thank you, Mayor. Phil Stokes, Electric Director. We have a substation called Moss. It's our oldest substation in town. And we were concerned about the only transformer we have there. It was like 46 years old. And so last year we put it in the budget to have it replaced. And so we had a new one ordered. It was en route and it actually came in January of this year. But in the meantime, we had a lightning storm to hit this transformer and take it out of service. We tried to, we switched it out so it wasn't connected to the load, but we energized it and it was still showing to be bad. We had an independent company to test it and they conferred that it was making gas, which means it was internally damaged. And so we took it out of service and we were able to feed our other loads without this transformer. Well, we looked at what it would cost to have it rebuilt and we were getting numbers that would be more than what a new one would cost. So we were not going to do anything with it, but we contacted our insurance adjuster and they have agreed to repair this old transformer for this amount here, this $535,230.53. And our only expense was the deductible of $25,000. And so we would ask that you would approve of this repair. It's going to take probably 3 months or so. And then we'll have this as a spare to our other transformers. And we probably are looking at putting it back at Moss as a second transformer. So that's our recommendation. Available for any questions.
Any comments from the audience? Being none, then I'll turn it over to the board for comments and/or questions of staff.
Mr. Mayor.
Carol?
Mr. Mayor, I do have one question. Does this come with any type of warranty since it's just being rebuilt?
Yes, Solomon does give a warranty. I believe, I can't tell exactly how many years, but they do have a warranty with it.
So the city is receiving a $500,000 transformer for the cost of $25,000, which I think sounds pretty good to me. So I appreciate the effort to turn it into the insurance company. Thank you.
Anybody else? Marla?
Last year, we budgeted 500,000 for it. How is it if we put it on this year's budget? How's it going to, take care of the finances that we allotted last year? Will those be? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The transformer that we bought was less than 500,000. It was like, I think it's 488,000 is what we spent for the transformer that we bought, the new one. And so, you know, there's roughly a, what, $22,000 difference in what was budgeted last year for the transformer. And so we've talked with accounting, and then we can pay for this $25,000 out of our budget. So that was something that we can work out.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Brad?
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Phil, how many other stations have redundancy? Will the Moss be the only one, or do we have others?
We have four substations, and 3 of them have redundancy. Both of them have 2 transformers. Moss is the only one that doesn't have 2 transformers, and we're looking at putting it there for redundancy.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that.
Good. Carol Smiley, you got your hand up again?
I was just going to make a motion, but I took it back down because I wanted to wait to make sure everybody was done.
All right.
I'm still getting used to this.
Oh, I am too. Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll turn it over to the board for a motion. Carol Smiley.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the contract with Sunbelt Solomon Solutions for the repair of the Moss electrical transformer in the amount of $535,230.53. But that's
Second.
not.
Second.
I got Brad first, yeah. I don't think he had his mic on, but it came over. His voice carries, as everybody knows real well, and he just lives up the street here from where we are right now, so I'm sorry. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion? And the motion was for the full amount, with memo stating that insurance will cover all but $25,000. Is that correct, Phil? That's the way that works? Phil?
Yes.
Okay. Phil, and Phil, okay. If there's no further discussion, then we will vote on the motion to approve. Roll call?
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Coleman,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next on the agenda, we will move now to ordinances. And is Ben on here? I haven't seen him.
Yep.
Oh, there he is. There's Ben Rhodes. Okay. Okay. Next is ordinance number 20-06, third reading, amending City Code Chapter 102, zoning for automobile sales. I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, Senior Planner Ben Rhodes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So before you is the third reading of the proposed code change to restrict the private auto sales in non-commercial zones. There are no additional comments since the second reading, and staff remains supportive of the ordinance, and we stand by for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I don't see any hands raised from the audience or the attendees, so I'll turn it over to the board for comments and or questions of staff. Being none, I'll entertain a motion to suspend on ordinance number 20-06, placing it on its third reading, reading title only.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Marla.
I make a motion that we place ordinance 20-06 on its third reading, suspending rules, reading by title only, amending City Code Chapter 102, zoning for automobile sales.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I'm not sure who that was. That
Yeah, let's not try to race each other on this.
who was it? Reed? Reed? Or was it?
I seconded.
Reed.
Reed, okay. So I guess we got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion? I know what's going to happen. You all are leaving your mics open so that you can be heard rather than mute them. Oh, we catch on pretty quick. So, okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion? We will vote on the motion to approve ordinance 20-06 in its third reading. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Chrysler,
Yes.
Coleman, Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 20-06, an ordinance amending Chapter 102 zoning of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code with respect to motor vehicle sales in residential areas.
Thank you, Philip. And now I'll entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 20-06.
So moved.
Harold Smiley?
Second.
Was that a Marla? Was that second? Marla second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion to adopt? Being none, we will vote on the motion to adopt. Roll call.
Chrysler,
Yes.
Coleman, Bob Coleman,
Bob?
Yes.
just shake your head yes. Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-06 has been adopted. It's interesting to be here in this boardroom. There's only three of us here, but there's whoever's speaking, we can hear Renee read your name, and then it comes across, so we're hearing everything twice. So bear with us a little bit there. It's kind of, maybe if we had headsets, that wouldn't happen. Earbuds, I'm not sure. But anyway, we're doing quite well, but you're doing great. Next is somebody's got. Okay. Next is ordinance number 20-08. First reading, amending City Code Chapter 102, zoning code for drive-through regulations. Ben Rhodes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I'm going to share my screen so you can see a PowerPoint presentation. So just bear with me one moment. Right.
There we go.
You guys all see that? Let me just minimize this thing here. Okay, I think that should work for everybody, hopefully. So for your consideration is a zoning code update on a drive-through siding and design regulations. These regulations were reviewed last fall. However, staff withdrew the ordinance to make some modifications. Staff has presented a related ordinance to require special use approval for drive-through abutting residential zones that went into effect in February. Staff is now ready to present revised siding and design standards. This slide shows what was in that original ordinance. We included provisions to reduce the aisle widths by 2 feet for buildings 20 years or older with limited space that have to develop a drive-through. We believe this update will allow older buildings to become eligible for drive-through services. In addition, you see there some of the other regulations that we included as shown on the slide and also in the staff memo. So as far as what's new, we've changed 2 content-based areas to address noise. We increased the maximum distance a speaker system can be from a residential structure from 100 to 200 feet in the operating hours regulations. Staff added more on solid screens so car headlights don't shine through the wooden chinks and wooden privacy fences. With staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval, and we stand by for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Okay. Ben, can you let us have our screen back?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Stop
Not a
sharing.
problem. There we go. We know you're proud of what you put up there. So
I didn't realize you couldn't switch back. Sorry about that.
okay, we have looks like we have. I'll turn it over for public comments, and it appears that we have one. Carla Wasson. Carla, you are available for talking right now, I believe. Carla?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, and Carla, just like anything else, this is being recorded, so we'll need your name and address, and then go ahead, okay?
Okay. Carla Wasson, 1004C South Mount Olive Street. And there is one particular provision in this proposed ordinance that I'm opposed to. It's the part of it where it says for existing buildings that are 20 years or older and are 18 feet or less from the side property line, and the drive-through aisle is adjacent to the same side property line, the drive-through aisle width may be reduced to a minimum width of 10 feet wide if the pickup window does not protrude more than 1 foot into the drive line. The staff report, which mentioned the denial of Taco Jack's request for a variance, stated that the foregoing provision is critical to prevent issues encountered with the aforementioned restaurant. Staff believes this provision will open up commercial buildings that could be converted to restaurants. This begs the question whether allowing that type of development is whether Taco Jack's developing into a drive-through would be desirable. But for the recently enacted ordinance that made drive-through lanes abutting a residential property a special use, this provision would have entitled Taco Jack's to a development permit as a matter of right. But when Taco Jack's applied for a special use permit, the city discovered that redeveloping the property as a drive-through restaurant would have a number of undesirable consequences. Among other problems, because of the size and shape of the lot and the position of the existing building on the lot, there's too little space at the northeast corner of the building to accommodate two-way traffic. And the addition of the drive-through lane would make traffic circulation on the property even less safe. This provision of the ordinance exceeds the city's power to enact laws because it's irrational. It's irrational because the age of the building is not a relevant factor in determining whether it can be retrofitted to accommodate a safe and convenient drive-through facility. It's discriminatory because there's no reason to treat the owner of a building less than 20 years old less favorably than the owner of a building 20 years or older if the properties are in the same zoning and use categories. The city staff is concerned that older buildings would be disadvantaged by a 12-foot minimum width for a drive-through lane. However, allowing owners falling within this provision to have a 10-foot drive-through lane will have bad results, as in the Taco Jack's scenario. The better option would be to strike this provision, and then essentially property owners in the position would have to apply for a variance in order to have that use. This would give both the city and adjoining property owners an opportunity to voice their objections to the proposed development if it appears that it would create problems. And that is what I would ask you to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Carla, I'm sorry. Any further comment? Any further attendee comments? I don't see anything. So I'll turn it over to the board for comments and or questions of staff. Carol Smiley, I think hand was first. Carol, you need to unmute your.
Yes.
Am I
I
unmuted?
got it.
I know. There we go. Okay.
My question is, what was the thoughts behind the buildings that are 20 years old or over? Does it have to do with the side setback?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did a survey of different buildings along Highway 412 that could potentially be converted for a drive-through service. And I found at least 10 different properties, not including Taco Jake's, that would benefit from this. And the reasoning being is that some of these older buildings just were not, they were tucked in really close to their side lot lines. And in some cases, it just be a benefit. You can't move an old building, obviously. And so if we want to allow some retrofitting for either a restaurant or a bank or any type of facility that uses drive-through service, it just makes sense to maybe allow this exception for these older buildings so that we're not continually receiving variance requests for these drive with issues. We checked with engineering, and the 10-foot width was not going to be a safety issue and was not a safety issue at the restaurant that Mrs. Lawson referenced. So,
Thanks, Ben.
thank you.
Mindy? Unmute your, there you go, Mindy.
Sorry. I was going to ask a question that actually been answered. That question was, how many establishments do we have that are over 20 that could be turned into a drive-through? And he answered the question about 10. But then I also wanted to ask, I guess, Jay, Ms. Wasson made a comment about it possibly being a discriminatory practice to have a different set of rules for buildings 20 or older. So Jay, can you comment on that?
Yeah, thanks. Well, we looked at it, and we believe that there's a well, not only a rational basis for doing this, but there is an actual basis that exists in fact based on the history of the zoning and regulatory history in Siloam Springs, that a lot of these buildings, I mean, they were in compliance with the code when they were built, but the codes have changed. I mean, they couldn't be built in that way now, but because they simply can't, they don't meet the current standards. So if they were to be, if there was not some exception, they wouldn't be given the same opportunities, the same right to develop as the newer properties. So we actually look at it as leveling the playing field and sort of eliminating a discriminatory provision. So, I mean, you can look at it, two different ways, but when we looked at it from a staff perspective and looked at all the factors, we didn't see a problem with it from that standpoint.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Any further comments from the board? Being none, then I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move the approval of the code change, but I think there's something else here. I move approve ordinance number 20-08, amending code chapter 102, zoning for drive-through regulations.
Yeah, make sure you first reading, placing on its first reading, suspending rules and reading title only. You good with me putting that in there, Carol?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Renee, you got that? Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Brad Burns?
Second.
I got Brad hand raised here. Okay, Bob, okay, Brad, or Bob, you got it? Okay, I missed that, okay. Brad, sorry. Brad, you have okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there further comments on the discussion on the motion? Brad?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We're fighting the technology. Yeah, the only comment I had, I tried to fit in is we've got 2 more readings on this. I will agree with the Wassons regarding this specific site and trying to retrofit. And I go further back. I'd made comments before about, Starbucks and how we're accommodating, but it is so tight and restricting in these spaces for full-size vehicles to move. And I think that's some of the concerns that I'm getting. And I know it looks good on paper, but when you physically try to squeeze in these drive-throughs and then try to exit out, specifically on 412, I think we're looking at some issues that might be hard to discuss over this format. But obviously, I think over the next 2 readings, you might see some of those questions pop up. So I'll wait till further. Thank you.
Philip?
So, Ben, I wanted to ask you a question before the board votes to clarify a couple of things. Mrs. Wasson asked that provision be struck from the proposed ordinance change. If that is done, then the 25-year-old buildings that couldn't comply with these new regulations, should they be adopted, would have to go through a variance process, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, I want to just get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Any further comments? If not, we'll vote on the motion to approve on the first reading on ordinance 20-08. Roll call.
Coleman. Hunt.
Yes.
Burns. Yay.
Yes.
Reed Carroll.
Yes.
Sappington.
No.
Rissler.
Yes.
And Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. And for those who couldn't see the screen, Director Burns has decided to, Philip, I'm sorry, Phil.
Ordinance number 20-08, an ordinance amending chapter 102 zoning code of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code with respect to drive-through aisles.
Sorry, Philip, I almost cut you out there. So, yes, Brad, we'll see your yes or no sign that you can hold up, because yours is one of those that's really coming through slow. It takes a while for us to connect with you. So now we move back into resolutions. The next resolution on your agenda is 19-20. Notify the board that this resolution has been withdrawn by the applicant. So you can strike it from your agenda. Next in would come resolution 20-20, special use development permit for Likens Leasing, 300 block of North Progress Avenue for Likens Pharmacy. Ben Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. All right. So yeah, you're looking at a special use permit for Likens Pharmacy at 310 North Progress Ave. There was a special use a significant development permit for this property that was approved by the board last December. You're now reviewing a special use permit specifically for the pharmacy on the site. Here is the site plan. This is the same one that you received back in December. The pharmacy will be located on the east side of the building, and I will circle that right here. Oops, excuse me. That's the location of where the pharmacy will be placed. So here is the site. This is looking to the north. Progress Avenue is on the right. Staff sees no impact to the neighboring uses brought about from the pharmacy use. It will be retail like what's in the area. Staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval with no conditions, and we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Any comments from the audience? Let me check up here to see if any hands are raised. I see no hands raised.
That's Marla.
So we'll go to board and Marla. I turned over the board for comments and or questions of staff. Marla?
I just wanted to ask Ben if they were going to continue the sidewalk there on Progress Avenue when they built the building.
Yes, yeah. It will be continued along the Progress Avenue from where the bank goes all the way along that side, I believe, to where that project ends, which will be basically just like what the you reviewed in December for the significant development permit.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other board members? Being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 20-20.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Carol?
I move that we approve resolution number 2020, authorizing a special use development permit for the 300 block of North Progress Avenue.
Brad?
Second.
All right.
Second.
I saw that. I saw your hand raised there. Is that what you wanted? Did you want to make a comment? Were you just, that's what you were wanting to do?
Director Smiley's just quicker than me. I don't know what to say.
She leaves her, she's getting kind of crafty there. She leaves her mic open so that she can just jump in, and she's real quiet. It's muted. Now, we can tell when you don't have it muted, Carol. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion to approve? Being none, we will vote on the motion to approve Resolution 20-20. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Coleman.
All right, motion is approved. Next, we will move on to our last resolution of this evening of regular business. It is Resolution 21-20, Final Plat Development Permit for the Bussey Edition, 21400 block of Davidson Road. Ben Rhodes.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor and Board. I can get this to move forward. There we are. So you're looking at a final plat at 21400 block of Davidson Road. The applicant is requesting to split this property into 5 lots. Here you see the 5 lots. Davidson Road is to the south with Shady Grove to the north of this area. And here is the site. Each lot is shown for clarity on how it will lay out. Each lot will have its own septic system and well. There's no city services in this area. Staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval with the standard condition, and we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Are there any comments from the audience? I don't see any. All right, I'll turn it back over to the board for comments and or questions of staff. Being none, do I have a motion? Oh, Brad.
Yes, sir. I'm trying, Mr. Mayor, as fast as my fingers will work. Ben, so has the word annexation come up about these folks? Enlighten me, please.
Yeah, this property is not eligible for annexation. It doesn't abut the city limits.
Does it not, as I'm looking at, it doesn't butt us off of, I'm looking at your map.
Yeah, it is outside of city limits. It doesn't abut the city limit boundary. I will pull it up here. So if you look there at the page 2 of the Planning Commission staff report, where you see the purple on the bottom left-hand side of the map, that's the city limits line. So that red line there, that's just shows Davidson Road. That's not the city limit.
Are you waiting for a slide? Are
Yeah,
you studying, Brad?
I'm looking, and yeah, I mean, I've looked at this. It's not my first look. Just when I look to the north and I see open land that's close to where we're at, and then I see city limits, and I see rural, and I see open land, and I see our future growth and development. I keep throwing annexation out there because every time I see rural and I'm familiar with Davidson Road, eventually we are going to be out that way. And the reason I'm speaking today is because I feel like sometime in the future, may not be in my lifespan on the board or in the city, but eventually we're going to be out there. And I just want to give those folks a heads up. I don't want to turn it into another lawless road situation to where one day they're coming to the board pleading and begging, and there's nothing we can do. So today is my format to just advise the folks out there that annexation in these rural sections are a possibility, and long term, as a citizen out there, it is shown to be your better option. Thank you.
Brad, that's good advice. That people make that understanding that when you try to do something this close to the city, at some point in time, a city that's growing in Northwest Arkansas is going to be reaching out to you to annex you into the city. So, but we can't do it until they're contiguous with city properties. Anyone else? Being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve on resolution 21-20. Do I have a motion? Bob,
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion.
Bob, did you make one? I couldn't tell.
No, sir.
Okay, we got Brad.
I don't know how to raise my hand, so I didn't make any motion.
Okay. I was watching.
Mr. Mayor.
Did I have a second? Was that Reed? Was that you that went on for a second?
We haven't had it recommended yet.
Mr. Mayor.
We got a motion by Brad Byrne. We got the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Marla. All right, Marla, second. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion? Reed, were you trying to make a second?
I was trying to, yes.
Yeah, you and Brad are the two systems that are way behind everybody else, okay? We need to work on that. We need to get you guys up to the 21st century here. Okay. We have a motion and second. Is there further discussion on the motion to approve resolution 21-20? Being none, we will vote on the motion to approve. Roll call.
Carol,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Bristler,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Coleman, Hunt, Burns.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That pretty well does it for our regularly scheduled items. I'll turn it over to Philip for staff reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Board. So I have a number of updates for you. The Lake Francis Kayak Park, the board approved the Siloam Springs Water Resource Company to allow for the clearing of the Water Resource Company property in that area of the old Lake Francis Dam. That clearing was completed by the deadline of March 31st at midnight, so that property has been cleared. I've asked staff to go out there to verify that they are meeting all of their stormwater requirements, and we'll know about that a little later this week. But that clearing and grubbing has been done. As many of you know, back in October, earlier in 2019, we fell short of the number of dispatchers that we needed to have our dispatch running 24/7. As of the 1st of this month, this is not an April Fool's joke, but as of the 1st of April, we were back at staffing levels where we're now operating dispatch 24/7 here in Siloam Springs. We're not quite at full staff yet, but we're very close to that. We're doing some final trainings that will have us fully staffed, but we have enough dispatchers to now begin operating again out of the police department and not using CENTCOM in the late hours of the day. You've heard me talk about it before, but I want to reiterate for the public, as far as city board elections go, positions at large, positions 5, 6, and 7, and the position of mayor are up for elections this year, November 3rd at the general election. The primary election for positions that have more than 2 candidates will be August the 11th. The filing deadline for anyone who wishes to submit a petition to run for one of those at-large positions is noon on May the 13th through noon on May the 28th. So anyone who's interested in running needs to pick up a candidate package from the city clerk's office. And then for those who would like to, that aren't registered to vote, who would like to vote in that election, I previously reported that that day was July 10th. It's actually July the 13th. So there's an extra Monday that you have to register to vote so you can vote in those elections. July 13th is the final day. We find ourselves in the unique situation doing this board meeting virtually because of the COVID-19 virus, and I just want to give the board an update and the public an update on where we are at the city. Obviously, we are doing everything we can to protect the health and safety of our staff and also of the community. We are asking everyone to do all that they can to slow the spread of the virus, and this includes avoiding gathering places, practicing good hygiene, maintaining social distancing, and discretionary travel, avoiding discretionary travel, and taking advantage of the drive-through and the pickup delivery services at Walmart and the other grocery stores that offer that when and where we can. If we do need to go out in public, we would ask that, or to the pharmacy, that for your protection and for the protection of the public, that we do wear masks and if possible wear gloves. We are, according to the governor, we're sort of at the top and we're seeing a slowdown in the number of cases. So hopefully we're going to come out the other end of this in the near future, but it's very important that we continue to do everything that we can to maintain our social distancing and to protect ourselves and protect the public from this virus. If you feel sick, we ask you to stay at home and don't go out in public. If you believe that you've been exposed to the COVID-19 virus, we ask you to contact your primary care physician. Don't just show up at the clinic. If someone in your household has been exposed, we ask you to keep your entire household at home and don't go out in public also. it's clear that together, working together, we're going to be able to get through this this epidemic of this virus, but it's going to take work by all of us. And so you can see it tonight here in the board meeting, having a virtual meeting. And we ask the public to be patient, but to continue to do everything we can to hold off on spreading this virus. Yesterday, many of you know that the Governor Hutchinson closed schools through the rest of the semester. He has the sole authority to close businesses, to issue shelter-in-place regulations. The city does not have the authority to put regulations out there closing businesses or to require sheltering in place. Some cities in the state are doing curfews. Little Rock did a curfew. The city of Benton, I believe, recently did a curfew for anyone under 18. And talking to the Arkansas Municipal League, on Monday we had a conference with the governor, had another conference today with the Arkansas Municipal League. If the board chooses to do or choose to do that, it would be appropriate for us to work with the Arkansas Municipal League and work with the governor to make sure that we're doing it in the manner that the governor would approve. A curfew is in fact a shelter-in-place regulation, and the governor is concerned about any curfews that would prohibit commerce. So we have to be very careful if that's where we choose to go. At this time, I would tell you, I don't think from an administrator standpoint that that is a necessary option. I asked the police department over the last weekend to give me an example, or at least give me some updates as to what they're seeing in the evening hours as people are in the parks. They're not seeing large congregations of people. They are seeing people using the parks as they walk, but they're maintaining social distances. We have seen an increase in usage at City Lake, but we believe that would be normal for warm weather and for all the outdoor recreational opportunities that are out there at City Lake, but we're not, again, seeing large congregations of individuals in a group. It's more social distance spacing. So at this time, I am not going to recommend that the board consider doing any curfew or anything like this, but I wanted to put the information out there in case you hear that other cities are doing a curfew. As I stated, we don't have the authority to close businesses, but based on the governor's extending the school closings for the rest of the school semester, we will continue currently to limit public access at city facilities. If you do have a payment with cash, we ask you to call City Hall and we'll make arrangements to allow you in to make that payment. I'll look at the issue of the 3% on the credit card payments, and I'll reach out to that resident who spoke earlier through email and see what we can do there to make that work for them. We've canceled all public and city-sponsored events, public city-sponsored events, and all public events requiring a city permit. We've closed the library, the animal shelter, the transfer station, and park amenities. We've suspended recycling pickup in the residential areas. We've canceled spring cleanup, and we also canceled this month's Planning Commission meeting, and we're having as many employees work from home as possible. All of these restrictions that we originally put in place are through April 17th, and based on the governor's closing of school, these restrictions and cancellations will likely be extended. I'll be meeting with staff later this week to discuss exactly how we're going to do that and how long we're going to extend those, but likely that extension at least through the end of the month, and then we would reassess and go from there depending on where we are. I want to make it also clear that the Arkansas Supreme Court has postponed all court proceedings through May 1st. We've been asked a number of times how many positive cases are in the city. We don't have that information. The state is releasing that information on a county-wide basis. I've seen a lot of comments that say we have that information, that other cities have that information. I'm not finding that to be true. In our conversation on Monday with the Arkansas governor, I specifically submitted a question asking if the health department could provide cases at the city level. He indicated that he would ask the health department, and I know this morning when I had the conversation with Mark Hayes, the executive director of AML, he's going to be talking to the state tomorrow and continue to push that so we can get those number of cases at the city level. But at this time, the only thing that we are seeing that's being released is the number of cases at the county level. There's no doubt that on a per capita basis, there's likely to be cases here in the city, but I don't want to put inaccurate information in the public, so we don't have that number. We are watching our finances. I've directed staff not to be purchasing anything that are not, any items that are not necessary at this time. Our finances, our sales tax, we expect that we'll get a hit in sales tax due to this. We won't see what that number is until May. Our March collections of sales tax aren't distributed till the city in May. So it's going to be a month or so before we see exactly how much of a hit we're going to take. Christina and I sat down the other day and looked at our numbers that we get from restaurants in the codes that the state gives us and the numbers that we get from personal services. And we would expect to see anywhere from $80,000 to $120,000 per month in reduced sales tax. But that doesn't account for increased sales in groceries and increased sales in other areas. So again, we don't know what that hit or that reduction in revenue is going to be at this time, but it is something we're watching. And as I meet with staff later this week, we'll be looking at what other things we can do to tighten our belts to keep everybody working as we can and move forward. The last couple items as it relates to this, talked about the curfew. I want to say to the board and to the public watching, I appreciate the patience that you've had with this new format of virtual meetings. I appreciate the patience from the public. This is something new to all of us. And as the mayor said, there are some hiccups here and there of raising hands or speaking or making sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak. We want to do that with the public and make sure they have that opportunity. And we just ask them to be patient with us as we go through this trying time. And then lastly, I don't believe this will be the last board meeting that we're going to have that we do through this virtual means. I suspect the next board meeting and possibly the first meeting in May may occur also. And with that, I would put out there that based on the COVID-19, I think you as a board might want to consider canceling the May 2nd coffee with the board, or if you do hold that, at least recreate a new format as to how that works so that there's not a gathering of greater than 10 people. And I'm not sure how to do that, but I put that out there for your consideration. And Mr. Mayor and board, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I have a couple questions, Philip. One is I keep getting phone calls and texts from folks who are just outside the city limits, but they are used to bringing their trash to the city, to our transfer station. And folks, this has been posted for quite some time that the transfer station is closed, but I understand not everybody checks their website before they head to town. It's my understanding that the Town landfill does take individuals' trash if they take it over, but they have to take it to the Town landfill south of 412 as you go into Town. If I'm mistaken in that, somebody can let me know, or we can maybe post that on the it is, yes, I'm getting a yes from Director Burns that it is there. So there is an opportunity to get that trash there, but it's going to be up to you to get it there. So I apologize for that. We're not the only one. There's not a city. I don't believe there's a city in Northwest Arkansas that does their own trash hauling, that is actually hauling trash and what have you. So we're not alone in this dilemma. One of the things I wanted to talk about too was we had a good article on KFSM Channel 5 yesterday or day before, highlighting and talking about Kind at Heart Ministries. And one of the things that they are doing is they're asking people to send cards to senior citizens in nursing homes and retirement homes. Those folks are used to not being able to get out, but they are used to family and friends coming to visit them, and that's not happening right now. So they are at the mercy, and my understanding is, and according to the report that was on the TV, whenever someone sends them a card, they are quick to share that with the rest of the residents, and it really is, it can be the high point of their day or week, depending on how often they get one of these. So find it, send it to, if you know somebody, send it to them with their name on it. If not, just send it to the nursing home or a retirement center, and let them know that we're thinking about them. Also, we want to make sure that within this time of crisis with this pandemic that we are experiencing in some of the hospitals and the local organizations that are responsible for blood collections are needing folks to give blood and donate the blood. It's desperately needed. So we ask that if you see a blood donation drive out there, take all your precautions that you have to do. And I'm sure that if you participate in one of these, they're going to make sure that you're social spacing and wear a mask and gloves and go participate and try to get out and support that need. I believe that is all I have right now. So I will turn it over to Director Chrysler to begin our director comments. Lisa?
I just want to say thank you to the two citizens that spoke earlier, I guess through email and then through the electronic means. It's difficult to communicate this way, but I appreciate people are still watching and caring about what's going on. And I just want to tell everybody to be safe. My family and I are praying for everybody. We're praying for our city leaders, our national leaders, our state leaders, and we just pray everybody stays safe, and we appreciate all the kindness that we keep seeing.
Thank you, Lisa. Reed Carroll?
I just want to say thank you to the employees, the city, that have helped to put this production on, that we can have a meeting. I know in this time of pandemic, social distancing and whatever else going on, we can still smile. We can still give a kind word, and we can still show kindness. And I'm thankful for the unity that we as a community are displaying, and that we can be a beacon to those in need. That's all.
Thank you, Reed. Carol Smiley.
I want to wish everybody a blessed and happy Easter. It's kind of gotten left out, I think, because of what's been going on in it. Palm Sunday kind of caught me by surprise. I also want to remind people not to be flushing anything down our stools or toilets except toilet paper. I think Tom Meyer did a presentation on what to and what not to do. And I'm glad to see that dispatch is now working again out of the police department. I am very thankful for our staff, our police, our fire, all of our healthcare workers that are working so tirelessly to take care of everybody. And I too wish that we all just stay safe and healthy. And I am glad to see, even in my neighborhood, we're walking, we're not getting close to each other, but we're waving, we're shouting hello. And I think that is very good. We need to stay centered with each other. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. Bob, and by the way, tell Kathy she looked good on the screen earlier.
She was bringing me big snacks, so that was my staff contribution. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are very blessed to be in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, and to have the city administrator that we do and the staff that we have that have just gone beyond themselves to make sure that our people are safe, not only the residents, but the staff. I see them being quite diligent about making sure they're not doing the social distancing and whatever it's called, to keep one another safe. I will say that I have taken my recycling twice now out to the public area, and I have put that in the proper bins, and I have developed a whole brand new appreciation for that gentleman that goes past here every week and picks that mess up from my box. I think I can organize it a little bit better now than what I used to, but it's quite a privilege to be in a city where people are so conscious of what they can and can't do, and I applaud that. And I want you to know that, like Director Smiley said, if Easter creeps up on you in your churches, like most of them are not having services, I invite you to go to SagerCreek.com, and we will be holding forth at Sager Creek. And this is not going to let us stop from having our Easter celebration. So I invite you to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Do you have your Easter egg, your Easter egg poster on your window?
If I could turn the thing around here, see it right here in the window?
I see it. All right.
It's up, boy. It's been
So
up.
I can count that, right?
You can count that. You actually saw the Easter egg, and my sweet staff colored that too.
My staff colored it for me as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't get done probably.
Mine wasn't the golden one, so you don't get 500 points. You just get one.
Oh, Mindy.
Okay, I want to start by sending the city staff and Phil Stokes. I see he's not on here anymore, but a thank you from Todd Wade. Todd is one of our city's solar panel customers, and he was able to attend the workshop tonight, and he sent me an email right after saying, please thank the board for allowing me to attend the workshop. He felt like it was very informative, and he wanted to give Phil Stokes a special thanks for the visual that he was able to provide. He felt like the meeting was very helpful. He did add that he would like to push for the 15, if not even 20 years, if at all possible. I do think we need to get more information from Carolyn, the other solar panel customer that joined the meeting, based on some of the stuff that she said. I think we need to get a little more information from her as well. But anyway, Mr. Wade was very appreciative of being able to sit on the workshop and felt like he was much more informed now on how everything's working. So thanks to all of you. Thank you to the city for going above and beyond to do what you can to keep the city safe. I know this is a difficult time. I personally am very thankful for all of the city trails. I've used those quite a bit over the last couple of weeks just to be able to get outside and get that vitamin D, which is important right now too, but have seen a lot of other people on the trails as well. And it does seem like for the most part, people are very much encouraging and following the social distancing rules. Even in the midst of the challenging times, I am seeing lots of good things. School district continues to deliver meals and will continue to deliver meals through the rest of the semester, even with kids being at home, or especially with kids being at home. I see lots of people making and or supplying the materials for masks, which are now even more important, even for the general public. I'm seeing lots of businesses do what they can to accommodate customers, and then I'm seeing customers do what they can to support the local business. I think the message is really out there that we need to do what we can to support those local businesses. I see the Manna Center providing food, continuing to provide food, and Marla can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're the only food bank in town that is providing food right now. So that's very good. And then just a special fun, good thing, shout out to Main Street Studios. for their March Sadness tournament. Don't know if any of you all saw that, but it was the cutest thing ever. Instead of March Madness, he took some of his pictures from over the years of babies crying and set up a whole tournament, starting with 64, going all the way down to 1, voted on by hundreds of people here in town. And the winner was Lakin, and I do not know Lakin's last name off the top of my head, but definitely a cute picture. So that was a lot of fun. I started a Facebook page called Siloam Share 2020, and it's solely for the purpose of just providing resource and information for people in town. Anything from where someone might see toilet paper, they can post that, and or just different kind of shopping resources, encouraging that pickup delivery. So if any of you want to join that Facebook page, Siloam 2020, just as I see things that I think might be helpful to others, I'm putting it on there. It has nothing to do with being on the board of directors, just trying to do something that encourages people in Siloam, helping people in Siloam. For whatever it's worth, I would be in favor of, I know you didn't ask for this, but I would be in favor of waiving or reducing that credit card fee for a certain period of time. So that's just my 2 cents. I would also be in favor of postponing or canceling that May 2nd coffee with the board. And as a couple other directors mentioned, I do wish all of you a happy and blessed Easter, and got a lot to be thankful for, even in this pandemic.
Thank you, Mindy. Brad Burns. I keep looking to the right or left, expecting to somebody to see somebody, so I apologize for doing that. So
I'm doing this for the city administrator. He was admiring my globe. It's just a simple reminder that this is a global issue. It's not just Siloam. So just keep that in mind. Stay strong, follow the guidelines, support local if you're able to, stay humble and kind. Thank you.
thank you, Brad. Marla, you got a lot of responsibility tonight. So
I do, and I'm going to take advantage of it. I have just a few issues that some of the residents have talked to me about. The Lake Francis Drive project that's now complete. They were concerned about the drainage inlets and the safety of children because the inlets are very large, and also the drainage pattern of the water. It's not draining well there. And then I just want to encourage people that there are speed limits for a reason, and we need to be extra careful since there are children out to play everywhere. I know the news has given us a lot of information on the pandemic. They have projected April 23rd as our peak. I just want to encourage the citizens to live one day at a time, that this is something new and we're still learning about it, and it's really hard to make projections, and we just have to understand and work with the professionals that are taking care of us. Also, the census, I hope everybody got in on the census, got that filled out. And I want to let you know the school is feeding about 800 children 3 days a week, and they're sending food home to 300 families each weekend. And so we just want to pray that that continues and they have the funds to do that. The Sappington family, my husband and I, we're still doing things normally. He goes to work. His job is essential. I go to work at the Amana Center because we are feeding families. The Amana Center is encouraging anybody that's experiencing food insecurity that they come in and see us. We're not doing interviews. You give us your name at our door and we push a cart of food out to you. We've tried to keep it as safe and simple as possible, and we don't want anybody to go without food. We're not looking at income guidelines or anything. If you need food, come see us. And I just want to appreciate the faculty and staff of the city, how they've adapted and changed what jobs they're doing to keep each other safe and to keep us safe. And many of the neighborhoods are coming together, the Easter egg hunt. They did the wild, going on a bear hunt. And I think it's wonderful that we can find good things to do and how our community is pitching in. And you can come by my house and we've been coloring Easter eggs on the sidewalk. So we're going to have an Easter egg hunt one way or another. And we just want to praise the Lord and have a good Easter in place. And I'm through.
No, you're not.
Oh, I make a motion that this meeting comes to an end. Our first virtual attempt.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Lisa, was that you, Lisa? Okay. We have a motion and a second. And I would agree with Marla that I think, all in all, I think it went quite well. And it's not something that we like seeing each of your smiling faces in person, but remember, if you pick your nose, we know it.
And if you don't, we do too.
Bob, I will tell you, you rubbed your eyes several times, and you're not doing that, not rubbing your eyes. Yeah. Okay. All right, folks. So like I say, this is not normal times, but we need a little levity every now and then. And again, as it's been stated several times, this is a serious weekend with Easter coming up, and it's going to be trying. And because there's a lot of programs that have been canceled and people that have been working real hard on things, and those are not going to happen. But if you've got a church that is live streaming, support them. And don't forget, just because you're not going to church, they still have bills and things to pay. So don't forget to tithe. If that's what you tithe, you need to continue your tithe. Oh. We have the motion. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Motion is approved. We are adjourned. Woo, pig, suey, go hogs sometime.